How's it going, guys? My name is Brian, and we're back today with another episode of Corner Flag Convos and Chips. I'm here with two of my usual co-hosts. Why don't you guys say hey?
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Shevin coming in from the coronavirus capital of the world, New York City.
Hey guys, Michael Philander from Georgetown. Hope everyone is doing well in these dire times.
All right, and joining our discussion today, we actually have a guest, Zawadi. Would you mind introducing yourself real quick?
Hello, my name is Zawadi. I am out of Atlanta, New York. Most people just call me Z. And full disclosure, I'm a Manchester United fan.
He got to that real quick. Okay, then. So before we get into the football discussion, I do want to take a moment to say that we hope everyone is staying safe and making sure that we're doing everything we can to stop the spread of COVID-19. I know many of us want to get back to our normal lives, but this is a time when, we need to be a bit more mindful of others and continue on a path towards pacifying the threat this virus poses. So I hope our listeners are healthy and abiding by general directives that the elected officials have been putting in place. So now that we have all that stuff out of the way, let's turn to the topic at hand. Today we'll be talking about the Premier League. As a league that is traditionally considered the most competitive league in the world, that couldn't be farther from the truth these days. Liverpool sit atop the standings with a whopping 82 points, with title holders Manchester City in a very distant second on 57, followed closely by Leicester on 53. Rounding off the top four, we have Chelsea with 48 points. In fifth, we have Manchester United on 45 points, and surprise package Wolves and Sheffield United sit on 6th and 7th, respectively, on 43 points. So let's start with the summit, guys. The gap between Liverpool and Manchester City is, as we've mentioned, both unexpected and massive. These two teams fought out a very close title race last season. What accounts for the change, do you guys believe? Zawadi, let's start with you.
I've actually been looking into this a bit, and it's something that is because of the way football is. People often attribute things to tactics, but the minutia of football comes down to different things: individual mistakes, attacking output, conversion of big chances. And where Manchester City have fallen and Liverpool have held strong is in the defense, particularly. I was looking at Understat recently, and I saw that Liverpool have actually conceded way less than they should have. And that's actually down to Alisson. I've been looking at one stat called adjusted save percentage, which looks at the save percentage of goalkeepers minus what they were expected to save. And that's the adjusted save percentage. And at the top of that list, as high as his actual save percentage is, his save percentage is 10% higher than it should be, because based on the expected goals, and the metric that they're using is something called expected shots on target, which is a bit different from expected goals. Based on that, he's been saving Liverpool when they're in dire need of someone to basically show themselves and be that sort of defensive statue at the back. City has not had that. And even though Ederson, if you look at that chart, he has been saving a bit more than he should have, it's not to the level that Manchester City would have needed to compete. Understat actually has Manchester City's expected points at about 5 above Liverpool if everyone within each team performed on average, not necessarily on average, but the way they were expected to. And let me just look at the data real quick here. Let me find it. Yeah. So we have Allison, who I think it's about 8.5% percentage points. His adjusted save percentage, which is the save percentage minus the expected save percentage. You have that, and Ederson is just below him at about 4.5% in terms of who are really outperforming their expected goals and what they should be conceding. But that's one of the main points when you look at it. One of the main sticking points when you look at it, when you analyze the difference in their two seasons. And I'm seeing that you can see that sort of trend. If you come off of that stat, you go back to what I was speaking about earlier, you can see it with Liverpool conceding 7.69 more, 7.69 less than they should. Manchester City conceding 3.13 more than they should have. Well, not necessarily should have, based on the quality of shots, the quality of assists, the big chances. We know how those metrics work. And I think that can be something that really, really accounts for the big gap that has sort of spread between the two teams at this time. So that's what I have to contribute on this.
Awesome. Very statistical approach, but I definitely agree with you. Allison has definitely, revolutionized, I guess, Liverpool. You look at them beforehand when they had Karius, I believe it was, conceding a lot more goals. He wasn't very confident behind, like in between the sticks. So having Allison is definitely up their game. Shev, let's go to you. What are you thinking on this?
Basically, he's right in saying that it's a difference of defense this year. I will also say that maybe coming into this season, Liverpool had something extra to prove to themselves, because how do you get to 97 points and not win a league title or something like that? So coming into this season, they had a lot to prove and they had more hunger. And I know Zawadi went into the more statistical side of the argument, so I wanted to focus on the intangible side of it. And it seems to me that this Manchester City side is a little saturated with winning right now. Besides, obviously, the Champions League, which they're going to covet for so long. It looks like they're disinterested. And for parts of this season, in important situations when games were tied or they were down late in games or something like that, they didn't have the same drive and motivation that Liverpool had. I remember watching a Monday afternoon game, Liverpool versus West Ham. Liverpool went 2-1 down in that game, and at no point in time did you ever think that they were going to come out of that game with anything less than a point, because they just have this grit to them, this determination. And I know like English pundits like to make these old corny cliches about, oh, grit and grind, get dirty, do it on a cold, wet, rainy night and that sort of stuff. But they have something in them this season that I don't think City have, which is just unbridled determination to get to the finish line and cross it before anyone else. And a big miss for City this year is their hugely misfiring defense. They miss Laporte, a guy who is such a calming presence for them and really stitches their back line together. They chose not to invest wisely in their left back situation in the summer gone, so that ended up costing them. And all in all, they just didn't make very smart additions in the areas of their team that they really did need additions. They just, they added more attacking power as usual. Joao Cancelo was always a very strange signing to me, because he's nowhere in the realm of Kyle Walker's talent. So it didn't make sense to me that they would spend so much money on a vastly inferior right back. So their transfer policy is a bit to blame. And like I said, it just seems to me that Liverpool wanted it more.
No, I definitely agree with that 100%. It definitely does feel that there's a bit more grit to Liverpool, and it just definitely does feel that Man City are very top heavy this season. I mean, they're always top heavy, I guess, right? But this year especially. So, Mike, you want to jump in real quick?
There's not much to add to what was already said, but one of the most important things I believe is responsible for City's basically not keeping up with the pace of Liverpool is in the central defensive midfield area. I believe that when City decided to purchase Rodri, they were again focusing more on attack than defense, because I don't really believe that much in Rodri's defensive attribute. I believe that he's a good passer of the ball, a good recycler of the ball, but when it comes to the dirty side of being a central defensive midfield, I don't think he's that capable. And in addition to what Shevin said about the left back, I really had thought that Pep Guardiola would have invested in a more the fullbacks that would actually try to invert, since he doesn't really have much with the lack of Fernandinho. That he could have applied that system and made the defense strong in a sense, because he would have more numbers back. But he didn't do that, and there's a lot of to be desired about his defensive position right now. And I believe that in itself is what actually made this gap so big, is the difference of defense. Liverpool defense and midfield are more assured than Guardiola's own. And there's a lack of confidence within Guardiola, because when you got somebody like John Stones at the back trying to defend, and Nicholas Otamendi that are not assured figures, you're going to run into problems. And invariably, I think right now City is conceding a lot of long-range shots because people are exploiting the deficiencies within the central defensive midfield.
So basically, what you guys are saying, it's defense. I can definitely see that, and I do 100% agree with that. So let's stick with City for a moment. Would one of you guys be able to give us a little bit more detail regarding their current ban from the Champions League? Because this is something that will have a massive impact for the teams just behind them, and we'll discuss that a little bit in more detail shortly. But do one of you guys want to jump in and clarify that for our listeners real quick?
Yeah, I'll bite on it. Basically, City, they have a 2-year ban that's currently in suspension, meaning that there's an official ruling that has to come out because they will appeal it, from the Champions League and any UEFA competitions in general. So this ban came about as the result of an investigative service that UEFA had done into City's accounts. Now, I don't know if anybody recalls, but a couple of years ago, City were asked to have their finances and their books looked at by UEFA, and they initially refused. And they went as far to say that, listen, we'll pay lawyers and any fines that UEFA impose on us. We're not doing anything illegal, so you don't have any rights to look at our books. And the situation right now is, from what I know roughly, and I'm sure Mike and Zawadi can shed light on it in their own way, is that City are in a problem where they've been caught, in inverted quotes, that they've been caught funneling money through a sponsor that is actually their team owner's enterprise. So it seems that they're getting more money from sponsorship when it in fact is just a cash injection from their owner, which would then go into the realms of financial fair play that they're violating. So that's my understanding of the situation. I'm pretty sure one of the other two guys knows more about it and they can shed more light on it.
Do one of you guys wanna jump in on it, or?
I
Yeah,
think
so
Shevin gave basically gave a good summary of the situation. I don't think there's any more to add to it. I guess other people would have different opinions on whether City should have been banned or not. I remember Shevin brought up the example of Juventus and also the PSG example. But I think he gave a good summary. I don't think there's anything else to add there.
Gotcha. And what do you guys think about it actually being upheld? Because, these things tend to be fairly fickle. You hear, oh, someone's been banned from the transfer market or the Champions League, and a couple of months later you see it overturned. So how do you guys feel about this? Do you guys think this will stand, or is it something that's just going to kind of just blow over and, City will be in the Champions League next year?
I personally think that UEFA might put the punishment on them, because especially it might set a bad precedence if UEFA doesn't punish them, because it's something that City has clearly been getting away with for a while, and especially with what happened to Chelsea with their transfer ban, and UEFA remaining tough on that until till almost the end of it. UEFA will want to continue to make Parsons an example so they could maintain the clout that this FFP regulation is actually working.
One can hope and one can dream that they'll actually end up doing that. But yeah, well, I guess we'll see what happens, right? So now let's move on to the other teams in the top four, Leicester City and Chelsea. What are you guys' thoughts on their season so far? Did you guys expect to see Leicester so far up the table this season? And in looking at Chelsea, how has Frank Lampard performed in his first season as Chelsea manager? Are there any things you guys can highlight with regards to what he's done well and where he and his young Chelsea side can improve? So let's start with you, Chev.
All right, you were asking me about his transfers and what he's done with his youth policy.
Yeah, so just give a general overview of like where Leicester City and Chelsea are right now, and how Frank has pretty much done, with regards to like his first year. So yeah, with regards to how he's done with like the youth side that he has, and where I guess he can improve.
Okay, so he's actually done something I thought was very ballsy when this season started. Frank Lampard, that is. I'll speak on Leicester after Chelsea, but he did something that's very, very gutsy. He had some of these Chelsea players on loan with him at Derby, and he would have worked with them at his time at Chelsea when he was trading with reserves, talking to youth players and stuff like that. Frank Lampard really championed that old phrase. I don't know who said it. If they're good enough, it doesn't matter how young they are. And it really clicked for him at some point in the season. Players like Mason Mount, Fiaco Tamori, Tammy Abraham, and Reece James, he's all showing these players considerable faith and trust in them. Now, their transfer policy, well, there wasn't much of a transfer policy to talk about considering that they had a transfer ban. Now, going forward is where we'll actually have to judge Frank Lampard, because I will say, as good as it was for that October to late December, early January period, things started to fall apart for him and results aren't going their way. And you would think that in a year with a very, very inconsistent race for the top four, Chelsea, based on the middle part of the season that they had, would be far and away ahead of everybody else, but they're not. And that's for a reason, because they just haven't been able to string consistency together. There are games where they look very intelligent and very smart, and then there are games where they just look naive and completely begin to fall apart when pressure gets applied to them. A game I can think of is the game that West Ham beat them at home. And then I think also Everton scored 3 against them at Goodison Park. And this is an Everton team that were horrible and have been horrible all season. And you can't even imagine that they would get such a result against Chelsea. They have been lacking goals in this team. Tammy Abraham has put in his fair share of goals, but he hasn't been to the level that they're expecting him to be or they need him to be. And their wingers have been utterly disappointing. Callum Hudson Odoi, I don't want to single him out, but I think right now he's towing a very interesting line in the hearts of the media and player and fans, because he was talked about as the heir apparent to Eden Hazard, and he's not doing much right now. And I understand he's coming back from a very serious injury and stuff like that. And pacey players like him do, require the fruits of their physical ability, but he's not looking quite impressive right now. And then other than that, they have an aging Pedro and an aging Willian, so there's not much production coming from the wings. So like I said, whatever Frank Lampard does with his transfer window that's coming up is going to be a big thing for him. Leicester City are doing quite well. I think to begin the season, they exceeded a lot of expectations. A lot of people I know I did, were framing that this could be the year we could see Leicester, Wolves, and you guys are going to laugh, but I also had at the start of the season West Ham with a chance to break the Big Six. I know it's funny to look at that now, but
well, listen, they did make good signings, so it's not completely far-fetched, right?
Yeah, it just didn't stick to the wall, I guess. But Leicester are doing pretty well. They've exceeded expectations. The fact that they're getting this much production from Jamie Vardy at the age he's at is quite frankly ridiculous. I don't know how he does it, but he does it. And they just have a very well-oiled team where the parts function well, and then the sum of the parts functions even better. And just to highlight people, they have 2 outstanding fullbacks. They have a fantastic defensive midfielder, and they have a very, very smart keeper and great leader in Kasper Schmeichel. And the play they've been getting from Jamie Vardy and James Maddison has been fantastic.
100%, and I do have to comment on what you said with Callum Hudson Odoi, because that was that he's a really big player, or we thought he would be a really big player for Chelsea coming into this season, but unfortunately, like you said, the injury. But let's hope he can come back stronger from that and show next season that he can do more. Mike, let's go to you real quick. What are your thoughts on Chelsea and Leicester this season so far?
Well, for Chelsea, I must admit that they've played well. and it's more so above what a lot of persons were expecting. Because like when the season started and we heard about this transfer ban and everything, we would have never thought that Chelsea would have been a top four team right away. But I do believe that Tammy Abraham has shown that he can be the player that Chelsea actually wanted. Because if you look back before this, Chelsea were in a very hard dilemma as relates to strikers. Ever since Diego Costa got sold, the striker deficit that they had was very problematic, and they really needed somebody that could have like took up that mantle. And I think Tammy Abraham has done a fine job. But and it really shows Chelsea also that a lot of these players that they actually have out on loan are players that could actually make a difference for them. And that is something that during the previous season, Frank Lampard saw when he was at Derby. Albeit he did not make it up to the Premier League, but he did very well using those same Chelsea youngsters like Mount and Tammy Abraham and so on. Sorry, not Tammy Abraham. Mount and the other players that he had on loan. So with that too, it brings into contention that Chelsea did well. You would expect them to do better, but what I realize is happening is that the pressure is now getting to these players because when you play at a certain level, there's expectations, and when there's expectations, there's a lot to carry now on your shoulders because after the season that they had started with, a lot of these players now come with the baggage of being played. I remember to use the basketball terminology, a lot of them are actually hitting their rookie walls now. So it's a situation whereby now you have to actually find a way to let these players mature in such a way that they can look past a lot of what is happening. I remember it's a similar thing that happened to Harry Kane during his second season, whereby a lot of the players, a lot of the pundits and so on had a lot of strife with him because he didn't score in like about, almost 2 months. And now they actually got this whole August curse thing that goes on. So there's scope there for Chelsea to try to get the players to mature, and I think in the future that will help them well. So as it relates to Leicester, Leicester again providing an anomaly of a season, I must say, because a lot of times when you look at Leicester, you would not expect they're just a team of surprises, and what is like the major surprise is Soyuncu, who came in and filled the Harry Maguire hole instantaneously. And this was something that was not expected. And you would look at somebody like Soyuncu, who's basically an unknown, and you would think that nah, he can't really do a good job there, but he's proven himself. And this is like the line of progression with Leicester. Find a player that no one knows, brings him into the team, he does well. And I don't know if it's the scouting team that is just amazing, or is it just like the system that they have that really helps to nurture these players. But again, with Leicester too, I realized that during the latter part of the season they started to drop off. I don't know if this is a situation that will continue like for the future too. But Jamie Vardy himself, I don't believe he could pull all the attacking weight, and I believe Madison is starting to have a little dip in form now.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to Soyuncu for a second, honestly, he was a player that quite a few teams in Europe wanted, but definitely no one expected him to come in and just fill that role that Maguire left right away. But big props to him for doing that. That was pretty good for a young player to do. Zawadi, you have anything to contribute to this?
Yeah, I do have a few things to add, particularly about Chelsea, because I think a few months ago, or even up to recently, I've been very critical of Frank Lampard and Chelsea because, of course, I am a United supporter. I know that United is about 3 points off of Chelsea. I realize that in the media, in some ways, the United team got a bit more criticism than Chelsea, and Frank Lampard was this English prodigy. That's the way he was portrayed. And I think my mind has changed a bit on that when I looked into the team a bit more. You would always hear Chelsea are doing great, especially without Eden Hazard. And they had the transfer ban. They couldn't really make a lot of recruitments. And I would always say, looking back at Eden Hazard's stint with Sarri, Chelsea had a much higher winning percentage when he was not playing. They even created more at times. So I didn't really take that as an excuse, even though the games were a small amount. So it would be not very smart to extrapolate and then form a conclusion from that. But I always said that. But looking into Chelsea, I figured out that Chelsea have had two problems. Two problems that right now I am not sure if to say it's on Frank Lampard or not on Frank Lampard. Their two problems are Tammy Abraham and Kepa. So
both of which are not good enough. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, Kepa's been interesting to watch.
Kepa has a hole in his hand, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yes, and looking at, because I heard Phil speak earlier about Tammy Abraham, and I have to disagree with him. And my opinion on Tammy has changed, the same way it's changed on Frank Lampard, because I was very supportive. I thought he was a great young striker. But what I've noticed with Chelsea is going back into the data, and you guys might see that I look at data a lot. Chelsea have conceded way more than they should have based on the type of shots, the quality of shots, whether it was a big chance. They've conceded way more than they should have. And I was like, what could possibly be the reason? Well, we know what the reason is. If I'm to be more specific, Chelsea have conceded, 7.86 more than they should have. And if you look a bit deeper into Kepa already has, we knew as of January, based on certain things that were released. He was 127th out of 132 goalkeepers in Europe in terms of his save percentage. And imagine being 127th out of 132 people. It's already that low. And then you go look at his adjusted save percentage. And when you look at his adjusted save percentage, Kepa, what is it? Oh, his adjusted save percentage is -10. Just so I give, I make this a bit more simple for the listeners. Let's say someone their expected save percentage is around 80%. Instead, they save 70. It's going to be -10. His own is already extremely low. And on the adjusted save percentage, it's -10. And that's something that is really quite shocking. Could that be down to the coach? I don't think Frank Lampard would be responsible for Kepa. Maybe you look at the goalkeeping coach. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes on the training ground. Conversely, Chelsea should have scored about 6 more goals. They're creating more, shooting more. They should be scoring more too. Why is that? You go to Opta, you go to the Premier League. Who has missed the most big chances in the league? Roberto Firmino, Gabriel Jesus, and third, Tammy Abraham. Tammy Abraham has missed 18, I believe, big chances this season. 18. Tammy Abraham should not be leading the line for Chelsea. So that is something I have to disagree with Phil on. I do not think he's good enough. I don't think he's anywhere close to good enough. In fact, Chelsea last season at this stage, they were amassing around 1.89 points per game. Right now, they're at 1.65. Let's say Chelsea did they were in line with their expected goals and assists against, and then you look at their expected points, would they be anywhere close to where they were last season? They would be exactly there when you do the projection. Chelsea's downfall is down to 2 players. Kepa, Tammy Abraham. All the big chances obviously don't fall to Tammy Abraham, but he's a central striker. And since we are on this topic and we're speaking about Leicester too, Jamie Vardy has also missed a lot of big chances, but here's the difference. Jamie Vardy has converted about 30-something% of his chances. If I go look for the exact figure right now, 32.2% of his chances, which means Jamie Vardy has been missing big chances, but he's been converting the more difficult ones, which is kind of strange when you look at it.
But Z, just one thing. As it relates to Tammy Abraham, I must remind you that Tammy Abraham, this is actually first full season in the top flight. So I believe that in some respects is being a bit harsh. Additionally, as it relates to as it relates to big chances and so on, you can't really pressure a guy that is his first season in Premier League that missing big chances. They got a lot of players that actually miss a lot of big chances over the period of time and they were actually seasoned professionals. So I think in some respects you're being a bit harsh, but I must say that you could continue to Leicester.
Yeah, that is understood, but it is his first season. But considering it's his first season and he's playing at a team like Chelsea, it should be understood that whatever he does, he will get criticism, regardless of his age. We had young players that went through the same thing. And he's leading the line for one of the big 3, 4, 5 teams in the Premier League. So he gets the same criticism that everyone gets. And to your point about players missing big chances, yes. And that's why I mentioned Jamie Vardy. But the fact that Jamie Vardy took how many shots? I can't remember the exact figure, but his conversion rate is 32.2%. His shots, he put 60% of his shots on target. It means that, yes, he may have missed big chances, but he's made up for it by either creating more difficult chances and scoring them, or scoring more difficult chances.
Wow, that was probably, honestly, the most cordial disagreement I've heard in quite some time. For me as a Dortmund fan, I was actually really interested in looking at Christian Pulisic and his season at Chelsea as of right now. But considering none of you guys mentioned him, I figured there's really not much to talk about anyway. So we're going to take a quick pause real quick and we'll be right back. All right, guys, moving on. So, let's move on to some of the other teams in the league. Now, I know each of you are avid Premier League fans, so let's talk about how each of your guys' teams are doing. So, let's start with Zawadi. I know you've already said you're a Man United fan, and let's talk a little bit about what their standings are like. What's gone well in their season, and what needs to improve, and what are the factors behind the shortcomings that they are facing.
So, when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer took over my team, I think I was very excited. To give you a reference, maybe Rio Ferdinand excited. I believe that he was probably the right guy based on how the season started, but it's that usual new manager bump. It has happened. Since then, there's been a fall off in form. The season did not start too well. Up to December, it looked like it might be the end of the line for him. In January, I think we've had the worst start. It was officially the worst start since 1992-93. His Premier League win percentage was in the 30s, but don't quote me on that. But I think things have really been looking up. it's sort of strange to see a team that has probably sacked about four managers in the last 5, 6, 7 years stick by his side like this. And I'm very interested to see where it goes. We're lacking in several areas. I think the defense still needs to be strengthened. I think we still need a defensive midfielder. Bruno Fernandes has come in and really changed things for a team. Personally, I don't think Martial is the right person to lead the line, but I see that the coaching staff sort of has faith in him. I think we should be much higher up the table, and the manager has a lot to answer for. But I'm just going to see where this goes, and I'm going to be a bit more patient because I don't want to get into the habit of not giving a manager time, because that's not what my team has ever been about. And I think if we fall into that sort of frame of mind, the team will sort of lose what made me support them in the first place. So that's about it.
Awesome. One of the bright spots, I've noticed for you guys is Bruno Fernandes. He's one hell of a player, in my opinion. My uneducated opinion, because I don't really watch the Premier League all that much. But 5 appearances, 2 goals, 3 assists in the Prem. You want to talk a little bit more about him? How has he fared and what impact he's had on the team?
I think that Bruno Fernandes has really showed the sort of quality gap between United and most of the top sides with a really good number 10. We've been playing different people in that position, most notably Jesse Lingard, who has constantly let us down, especially in situations where we might need points. Sometimes he collects the ball in tight spaces. He doesn't know what to do with it. But Bruno Fernandes is very different. I feel like he's a bit more direct. He has a wicked shot on him. He can pass the ball. Bruno Fernandes, he does lose the ball a lot. He does take a lot of shots, but that's a sort of mentality he has. He can push the play. He's always looking. If you look at Bruno Fernandes during the match, especially off the ball, his movement, looking over his shoulder, he knows where everyone is. He makes everything tick in that United midfield. That's something we've really been missing. So it will take a bit of time to see if, yes, he really is a quality player, or he's just a standout in a team of average players.
I've definitely admired him for some time. I remember back in 2018, he quit and then re-signed for Sporting after that whole pitch invasion in May when players were attacked by fans. There were very light rumors that he might sign for Dortmund, and that got me super, super excited, but that never materialized clearly. So enjoy watching him. He's pretty great from what I understand so far. A short time to sort of judge him by, but from what I've seen, I've definitely liked it. So now, Shev, moving on to you, same concept. Let's go through Arsenal's season so far. What are the bright spots and not so bright spots you can tell us about? And if you could tell us a little bit more about how you feel Mikel Arteta has done so far in his short time in charge, that'd be great.
There's more not so bright spots than bright spots.
I was trying to keep it light here. You're getting dark there, man.
This is one of the crazier Arsenal seasons I've ever had the chance to be a part of. And listen, I've seen Sebastian Scolacci, I've seen Shamak Bentner, I've seen
Lord Bentner,
the League Cup final against Birmingham. This is up there. This is up there. Listen, I'll say that coming into the season, I always knew that Unai Emery wasn't the right person for the job. I was never sold on Unai Emery. When the club brought him in, I was against the move.
You were against the count?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Unai Emery. I've seen what he failed to do at PSG, and I think he rode that success that he got at Sevilla for way too long. And he's notoriously known as a cup manager, and even when it mattered for PSG in the cup, he couldn't deliver. So I wasn't very convinced about his ability in big clubs. And now I understand he wasn't helped by the lack thereof of signings, but he had more than enough firepower with him. I understand the defense wasn't the best and midfield was an issue, but he could have made something work. Anyway, it's enough of Emery. He left. It was the right move. As far as the signings the club did this season, obviously the big one is Pepe. and he's an immensely talented player, but his problem is that he's only shown it in flashes and he hasn't been very consistent, and he hasn't, even though he's been good, I will say Pepe hasn't stood out for me as a player that like you can rely to win a game for you on his own. You know what I'm saying? Like I think every great team has an X factor player. Somebody who just puts their ball on the foot and he's like, listen, I'm not gonna lose today. And he's not that guy. We have that guy in Aubameyang, yes, but he can't do everything on his own because of the way he plays football. Um, but as far as what the squad is looking like right now, I'm happy with the Kieran Tierney move. Was happy to see Guendouzi play more football when he was. I thought the Dani Ceballos loan was a good loan. Unfortunately, he spent a lot of time injured. And I like the William Saliba addition, even though he hasn't played for the club this season. He does strike me as a very talented player. I have looked at a few of his games in Liga, and he looks like the real
It
deal.
looks exciting, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's getting all this to mesh together. This team is, whereas Leicester, I said previously, was good as parts and then as a whole, this team is good in parts and it's not quite great as a whole yet. We have phenomenal strikers. We have a winger with a lot of potential. We have a lot of promise in defensive midfield. But in terms of attacking midfield, in terms of centre backs, there's not much. And I think we really need two or three world class players to really tie this team together and make it make sense. As far as Arteta himself, I like what he's done, the culture he's brought back to the club. He's a player that played in the Renaissance period of Arsene Wenger in the latter part of this decade. So he understands what it means to lift something and to win something. And I like the fact that the players respect him and the players respond to him, because I feel like that wasn't there with Emery. And the results haven't always gone the proper way they needed to be. But I'm not going to blame him for working with a very broken squad, and a squad that just, quite frankly, is not good enough, because we're barely where we are because of Aubameyang right now. And God forbid if he departs in the summer, it's going to take a lot of readjustment to try and make that work. So he's the right man for the job. We just need quality signings and not potential at this point. I think Arsenal needs to go for world-class proven players, or at least players who are very, very good and have played top-level football for quite a few years, and at least Champions League football. And only then can Arsenal get back into that consistent top four berth and make it count.
Yeah, Arsenal just hasn't really been an easy puzzle to solve these days, that's for sure. You guys have pretty amazing talent in Lacazette, Aubameyang, and Pepe, like you've mentioned, but certainly expect to see more results in the win section. But to be fair, there's been so much turmoil in terms of managers that I think it's understandable, I guess, to a degree this season. But yeah, I agree with you. Definitely, Arsenal needs to really get their stuff together and look into some quality signings come this summer. Now, I know you touched on Aubameyang real quick. There's been quite a few rumors of him leaving, and Real Madrid seems to be the main team that's looking at him. What are your thoughts on a potential move? Would you? I guess from what your comments, you wouldn't really accept it from the Arsenal standpoint. But would it be a good move for the player if he decided to move on? And Arsenal decides to sell? I know it's a very charged question,
if
but
you
I
asked
need
me
to
this
ask it.
question 8 years ago, when Van Persie left for Manchester United, I would have given you the same answer I gave you then. I hate the player. The player is terrible. He's scum. He's trash. Traitor, whatever, this, that. But listen. At the end of the day, Aubameyang is 30. He's won a German Cup with Dortmund, and I think that's it for his CV. And at his age, I understand that he wants to be playing Champions League football. He wants to win, and he wants to challenge for a league title consistently. And if he feels like he can do that at a Real Madrid, at a PSG, at a Barcelona, something like that, by all means, I'm gonna hate losing a player of his quality. So I'm not going to be happy about it, but at the same time, I'm not going to grudge Aubameyang for making the right choice for his future, because he does deserve to dictate how he gets to finish his career. And as a player like him, who is solely dependent, on his physical attributes to make his game work, he doesn't have much time left at this level of football. So if he wants to go on and win something and stack his shelves with medals, please, I welcome it. I just hope the club has a plan in place for his departure if it so happens, and they invest any money gained from the sale wisely.
I would think that, you could have Lacazette leading the line and maybe getting another striker in to back him up, unless you feel that
Maybe
Martinelli
maybe
is ready.
maybe a true winger to back up Lacazette in addition to Pepe. So you'd have Lacazette, Pepe, and then just I'm not saying this is a rumor or a link or anything like that. I'm just throwing a name out there, but somebody like Memphis Depay, or somebody who can take the ball wide in addition to playing well in front of goal.
All right. Thank you for your assessment, Chev. Now let's turn, last but not least, to Mike. Tell us a little bit more about what Tottenham season has looked like. And of course, I have to ask, because this is something I thought quite a bit about, actually. How has the sacking of Pochettino and subsequent appointment of Mourinho affected the club? And in your opinion, was that the right move?
So Tottenham's season was up and down season, I must say. But we're still ahead of Arsenal, so I guess we're
Ha
better.
ha 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 ha.
It was always going to happen, It was always coming.
Yeah. So, well, basically, what happened is that I think our season actually began when we lost to Liverpool in the Champions League finals. It's very strange, but that was when our season actually began. And I believe that led to a lot of dominoes falling in our team. So Parsons got really annoyed at Pochettino because they believed that his methods were exhausted and they did not want to continue along the same line of thought, basically. And the team just delved deeper and deeper into a shadow of themselves until it could not be, it was a point beyond repair. So like I remember very vividly, like every morning I used to wake up and just check in Twitter to see if Pochettino was actually sacked because that was how bad the situation had become. So with that, with the follow to Pochettino, also came the follow with players like Christian Eriksen, and also like they had a lot of ongoing sagas, a lot of infighting with the team, and that created a very toxic environment. So here comes Mourinho now. So Mourinho, when Pochettino got sacked, Tottenham was at 14th in the Premier League, and it was a necessary evil because I did not see anything with Pochettino methods getting better from that point on. Even though there was great emotional connection, like I love Pochettino so much, I would literally go into a war with Pochettino anytime he actually asked me. But it was a time that the fairy tale had to come to an end, and sadly, it was that time, and we had to basically take someone else. And who else better to take than Mourinho when you're trying to win something? So Mourinho came in, and Mourinho started the season well. I think up to the last three games that he actually was with Spurs, he'd actually won the third most points behind Liverpool and Manchester City during that period of time. And it really showed that Mourinho really brought the new manager effect basically onto the team. However, one of the saddest thing about the Mourinho era so far has been injuries. We lost Son, we lost Harry Kane, we lost and Christian Eriksen got sold, and then we end up losing Bergwijn that we just had brought in. So it was a situation like that, and everything just went downhill. In addition to that, our defense is too old, especially the central center backs, and that compounded the issue so much. Right now, Spurs defense is utter trash, I must say, and there is not a screening presence like it was before, where we had either Wanyama or Dyer, what was more in his prime, and or Dembele. There is nothing there. So teams literally just walk right through our team and score. I shit you not, if you look back at how teams score goals against Tottenham, they just start running straight to the defense, and the defense can't cope with anything, and they just score. It's that easy, and that is a problem that Mourinho, who is a very defensive minded coach, needs to fix. And he was complaining that he did not have enough time to fix it. But I don't believe time would actually fix it. I believe change would actually fix it. And that is why I'm looking forward to this transfer window, that at least they bring in a center back to like help with what is going on. And at least a fullback too. Because there's a player there in Aria that statistically Aria is a gem, but when it comes to like concentration, Arya has some of the most freakish lapses that you could ever see. And the sad part, right? When fullbacks are not good enough, is one thing. But when wingers know that you're not smart enough, is another. So I remember very vividly when we played Liverpool and Sane Mane went into the box and literally stopped until Arya kicked him in the box to get a penalty. And that is basically what Arya has been contributing a lot of times. So it's very good statistically, but there are period of time that he lacks concentration. And I believe if Mourinho could probably fix that aspect of his game, he could become a very good fullback.
Yeah, well, let's see. Let's see if he can work that magic. You know, I have to be honest. I never thought Mourinho as a replacement for Poch would be, I guess, a good appointment at the time. I had my reservations, but it kind of fits, especially considering his feud with Arsenal and Arsene Wenger back in the day. So I guess he has that at least going for him. And considering your assessment, he's not doing all that bad. Steven Bergwijn as well, 5 goals, 10 assists, 87.7 pass accuracy. He's certainly, been really good, and he knows how to finish. That rocket against Manchester City was absolutely beautiful. He's added a further 2 goals in the Premier League, and as you mentioned, unfortunately, he is injured. But of course, we do wish him a very speedy recovery. All right. So moving on, I was hoping we could talk a little bit more about Newcastle, actually, because while they're sitting in 13th right now, they're due for what looks to be a £300 million takeover. According to various outlets, Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, PIF for short, is due to try and buy the club from Mike Ashley, who, as I understand, isn't really loved by the Newcastle fans. There's been a lot of talk regarding the types of signings Newcastle might sign as well. And while we can safely assume that we won't see Mbappe, as part of the Toon Army anytime soon, I just wanted to get your guys' takes on this. How do you guys feel about the potential of another super club in the league? And what players do you think would be realistic signings for Newcastle? That could bring in to take them to the next level. Shev, let's start with you.
Well, based on our last episode when we talked about RB Leipzig, I think you guys know where I stand with money and clubs. I like it. It's a good move. What I will say is that I've heard rumors that the Saudi Arabian fund takeover might be blocked on ethical grounds because there might be opposition in the form of the UK government or other owners of teams. I don't know where that's going to go if it does happen. I like it. Listen, it's interesting. It adds a new element to the league, and it's a league that already is known for huge cash injections by owners, so it wouldn't be anything we haven't seen before. I just think it's going to be unique now seeing it from a club that's historically always been thought of as a small or mid-table club. But Manchester City were thought of the same way before, so we're going to see where that goes. It's exciting. I like it. What I think they need to do is establish a clear 5 or 7 year strategy of getting to the top. They're not going to get to the top right away within 1, maybe even 3 years, but they need to formulate a clear cut plan. I don't think signing, well, first of all, they're not going to get the absolute best players in their first season of money because they don't have Champions League football. They don't have a project behind them. They don't have a great manager behind them. The big thing for them now is getting a great manager to co-sign with them. And I heard Mauricio Pochettino's name was linked to the job. I don't know if it's going to happen, but he has been linked. And, once they get a quality manager in there that can work well with players, I think their first season, they should aim to sign proven players from the Premier League that have been there for years and that are at clubs towards the bottom of the table or in the mid section of the table. Just to throw out a few names, a guy I always thought is very talented and it doesn't reflect because of the team he plays for is James Ward-Prowse. He plays for Southampton. Very, very talented English midfielder, and I think he can do well within their midfield with the Longstaff brothers. Yannick Vestergaard, who also plays for Southampton, is a very good centre back. His lack of pace may cause people to turn their noses up at him, but he's very, very calculated on the ball. He can read the game very intelligently. And then someone like, I had another name in mind that I couldn't remember. Oh, sorry. The two Norwich City fullbacks, Max Aarons and I think it's Jamal Lewis, his name is. Those are two very, very underrated fullbacks this season, and they've been quietly putting together good runs of individual play. It's just that you don't hear much about them because of their team's poor results. Like I said, for the first year, try to focus on talent within your league, and then in the second year, hopefully you've secured a Europa League spot. You can start branching out into rough diamonds in Europe, maybe players at mid-table clubs in Europe that want to move to a bigger league and things like that. And then maybe by the third season, you start with your first like superstar signing and it goes from there. But that's how I think they should do it. I'm just a guy who sits and records his opinion on football in his room, so I'm not exactly the one making the money decisions. But that's a healthy strategy, I think, and we'll see where they go from there.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think that's definitely well thought out. Um, yeah. So Mike, do you want to jump in real quick?
Well, conversely to what Shevin said about them investing in like players within the Premier League, I think the most important investment would be scouting staff. I've always peddled and believe that scouting staff is probably the benchmark of all good teams because, like in the state that they are in, they wouldn't have this big injection financially because of FFP regulations and so on. So there is a lot of scope within there, but one would look at like how can a owner then invest within his team, bringing up the quality of the team without breaching FFP. Well, the best thing to do is invest in good backroom staff, and that in itself could put Newcastle at a different sphere. As it relates to Pochettino, I heard that Pochettino is not necessarily willing to take the job, but I think it would be a very good move for him because he would have something now to work with. As it relates to me personally, Newcastle is one of the biggest bane of London clubs. Like Newcastle would perform poor all season and then show up against a London club. So I don't really want Newcastle having a couple millions of dollars to spend, and they'll just give us bigger headaches in the future. And I really detest that. But I do
But it's
believe
good for the fans.
Newcastle, yeah, from a Newcastle fan point of view, is a very good move for them. They've been struggling with Mike Ashley for years, and Mike Ashley doesn't really care about anything but his money. And that is basically where Mike Ashley stands. So I believe replacing Mike Ashley with Saudi Arabian form would be good. The ethical issues are there, and additionally, with it crumbling in oil prices, Saudi Arabia is actually looking not so pretty anymore because I think they had a $220 billion deficit for the first quarter because of the fall in the oil prices, and they're actually trying to cut back on their oil production right now, even farther. So there's a lot of geopolitical situations there involved. So we have to basically wait and see what happens.
All right. Zawadi, you want to jump in real quick?
I know it's hurtful to say that Pochettino thing. Pochettino going to Newcastle is probably your worst nightmare. But I think people are getting a bit carried away with this entire Newcastle takeover. As Phil mentioned, FFP is still in place, so it's much more difficult for you to have a Chelsea sort injection or a City sort of injection, the same way Sheikh Mansour poured money into the club. Because FFP is a 120-page document, very complex. And in some way it restricts, the gist of it is that it restricts clubs from spending more than they make. So the new owners, rich, whether they have hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, the aim, their agenda is still the same thing. Find ways to increase Newcastle's revenue, because if they don't find ways to do that with legitimate sponsorship deals, it's the same thing that Manchester City are in trouble for. Newcastle will just end up being fined, being punished. I don't know if they would care. I am very careful about what I say about a nation like Saudi Arabia live, so I'm not gonna get into that. But I really don't think that cash injections is a possibility or it will happen. As Phil said, there are other things that they can invest in. I think the new owners have a sort of clout, and they would be able to market Newcastle in different ways, whether it's naming rights, whether it's sponsorship deals, whatever it may be. And I think that's the way the revenue can grow.
Slap the team logo on a barrel of oil and just sell it to people in the US.
Yeah, but there are different ways that they can go about it, but it's not the same as you could do it before. So I don't think it will be any sort of rapid growth or progression. I think if they make better decisions, Newcastle could be much better off. And I don't necessarily think you needed these new owners. It could have been any new owners. They just needed to make the right decisions because of the restrictions that FFP put on clubs in general. So we'll see how it goes. But I think the sort of discussion going on in the media, publicly, I think a lot of people don't understand the sort of restrictions that Newcastle will have on them, regardless of their owners.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's definitely a very controversial thing. Going off the clout idea as well that you mentioned, that could actually extend to players, I believe, as well. If, they can promote an attractive long-term plan. So one player I thought, in my eyes, that was realistic for Newcastle to look into was actually Dries Mertens. The club are reportedly linked with the player, and Mertens is out of contract this summer at Napoli. So that would preclude any sort of massive money transfer. It'd just be the wages. Right now, if he doesn't extend, he seems like a viable option. He has 12 goals for Napoli this season, which is a lot better than their record signing Joel Linton has as of right now, which is 1 goal in the league this season, which is kind of insane coming from the seasons that he was having in the Bundesliga. The top scorer this season is John Joe Shelby with 5, and that goes to show that the front line definitely needs an added boost. So Mertens would come in with hefty wage demands, as mentioned, but there wouldn't be any transfer fee for them to worry about. Alfredo Morelos is actually another player I was thinking. I thought he was a fairly good shout. He plays for Rangers, and he has 29 goals and 46 appearances for the club. He's a player I've written about in the past, and he could potentially be ready for either the Bundesliga or maybe even Newcastle if they're looking for a striker in his mold. All right then, so let's move on to the rest of the league real quick. What teams are you guys surprised to see at the other end of the table, and which teams are less of a surprise? And if you guys could comment on any players on that end that if their teams are relegated that they deserve to stay in the Prem. And if so, what teams would be the best, I guess, places for them to land? And maybe you guys could touch a little bit on Wolves or Sheffield as well, considering, we omitted them earlier on. So, Shev, let's start with you.
The first thing I heard you mention was, the thing I paid most attention to, players that should stay in the league should their teams be relegated. I have 2 big ones, Tyrone Mings and definitely his teammate Jack Grealish. I think they both need to find top tier clubs, especially Grealish. If Aston Villa goes down,
he has a lot of suitors.
Yeah, he's quite talented, and Mings is a very, very good center back too. Just put him in a better team, and I think you'll be able to see him shine. What's his name? John McGinn as well from Aston Villa. Well,
yeah,
a lot of Aston Villa players in there. Norwich, Todd Cantwell is very good. I know Zawadi is a very, very big fan of Emi Buendia, who's also very good. And they also have, I guess, Pookie, but he's been a little hot and cold since that very, very good start in August. So I'm not 100% convinced by him. But Cantwell, Buendia, and the 2 fullbacks I mentioned in the previous section, Max Aarons and Jamal Lewis, I think those guys are very talented. As far as surprises for where people are, Sheffield United is definitely the very big surprise for the season. Them being so high is just a testament to the good job Chris Wilder has done and the way the players have bought into his policies and his style of system and the way they make it work. And it also, in terms of like surprisingly good players this season, Dean Henderson is a big one for a lot of people, and me especially, because coming into the season, I had no idea who Dean Henderson was, but he has been, I would say, after Alisson, Alisson, maybe De Gea second, but he's been a little bit shaky. I know Edison's been very shaky this year, but I would say Dean Henderson is definitely like within the top 4 for goalkeepers this season for me. If Alisson's number 1, he's arguable from 2, 3, or 4. So, and pretty much. Oh, I also like to highlight Danny Ings and the work he's done at Southampton. When they conceded, 9 goals to Leicester City, it looked like their season was doomed. And, here they are. They strung a lot of good results together, including, I think it was a New Year's Day win or a Boxing Day win against Spurs when they won, which is a huge result for them, and they're charged back up the table. So Danny Ings is a guy to watch out for. A little bit of a disappointment this season was Bournemouth. I've always been a very big fan of Eddie Howe and the type of football he plays and the exciting, tense atmosphere that they have at the Vitality Stadium because it's such a small pitch and it's such a small stadium. All the games feel so tense and cramped up with each other. So it's been a little bit disappointing to see the results that they've had. I know Callum Wilson and Josh King would have lots of suitors should they go down. But yeah, that's my take on the stance of the league so far.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Todd Cantwell there. That's definitely one of the players that I would be looking at as well. 6 goals and 2 assists so far. He's been kind of one of the bright spots under, or for a otherwise underwhelming Norwich side. I feel it's a team that can perform against the big teams, but at times, it's just interesting to see how they fall over. Mike, you want to chip in real quick?
So yeah, I would agree with a call with Cantwell, but I think Bedoya has been having an amazing season. Like it's very underrated season for him, but like seriously, statistically he's a beast. Like his dribble percentages and the dribble success rates and so on, they've been amazing. So as it relates to other teams that I was actually campaigning very hard for West Ham to fall. So because like they have a kind of very talented players there that could potentially stay, like for instance Felipe Anderson and Izzy Diop, also Arta Masuaka, some very talented players that I believe they require a bigger club to actually pull that potential from out of them. And in addition, definitely the surprise of the season is definitely Sheffield United, who's been having an amazing season. Like literally, I kid you not, like most of the players in that team would actually look like League Two players that just happened to get together. And Chris Wilder definitely should be having a lot of praise right now for the job that he's done. He's actually implemented a new system, which is called the inverted fullbacks. And sorry, the overlapping fullbacks, and it's been amazing. A lot of success he's been getting from that.
Overlapping center backs, I think. Not
Yeah. And additionally, as it relates to Wolves, Wolves have been having a good season. They've finally been trying to cement that spot within the rest of the top six, and they've actually overtaken Everton to become the next big thing outside of the top six. And they've been showing some amount of consistency. But I believe, as it relates to Wolves, it is very striking that Sheffield United has actually just come to the Premier League and spent half of what, probably even quarter of what Wolves have spent, and done, to me, a better job than them this season. So yeah, so I guess yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned West Ham real quick there. Sebastian Aller. I know we both watched the Bundesliga. Has it been disappointing for you as well? Because watching him the way, he's kind of not really lived up to the same potential. It's been a little disappointing for me. What about you?
Yeah, it's been very disappointing. If you ask Shevin, you could hear the praise that I gave to Sebastian Haller before he actually came into West Ham. I was actually very taken aback by the move to West Ham because I think that he's a player of a higher caliber than West Ham. And West Ham is not on the level that Frankfurt were on last season. So I believe that a better move for him was to probably stay, but I believe they probably had a lot of financial incentives for him to go to West Ham, and he didn't really show a lot of what I know him to be at. And the same thing happened with Joelinton that came across from the Bundesliga. Joelinton was very, very good when he was playing the Bundesliga, but like he could not translate that to the Premier League. And I believe there's a situation whereby in West Ham, I don't think that there's like a big chance created within the team, and that might be affecting Sebastian Haller, who is more of a target man than the other things. He's a little more agile than other target men, but generally that's his role.
I mean, if you look at the Bundesliga, or rather when he played there, he was high up on assists. But yeah, I do get what you're saying. He definitely is a bit more of a target man, and if he isn't receiving that production, he's not going to perform as well. Zawadi, let's go with you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just laughing at Phil a bit because I can just feel his West Ham hatred searing through. But as you guys were talking about, I think West Ham they've really shocked me in terms of their performance, the amount of money they've spent over the years, the team that they have. and I would not expect them to be in the position that they're in right now. I personally don't care if they stay up or not. It's just that I find it very shocking. Shevin mentioned previously that I'm a huge fan of Emi Buendia. I really don't think that this is the type of player that should be going down. I think he's one of the best creators in the league. In terms of his decision making, I think with a great coaching system around him, a good team, right environment, he can really blossom into a player that is world class. And I really, really want to see him go to some team. I wanted him at United, but I don't think that's where we're looking. We're currently looking into Sancho. Sorry, Brian. But but it's just I would like to see him somewhere. Probably Spurs. Maybe even Dortmund. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to interject there, I would actually like to see him at Everton. Everton looks like a very good spot. Bernard hasn't done what he was supposed to do, so I believe that Everton would be a really good place for him to blossom.
Yeah, but somewhere. I just think he's a talent, and I don't want to see that sort of talent being wasted. Sheffield is the surprise of the season, actually. I know Phil was trying to explain something about Wilder's tactical approach. Yes, there was a discussion when they were first promoted among people who generally watch the championship about whether Wilder and his coaching team would be brave enough to actually play that sort of system in the Premier League. And for me to explain the system, what actually happens is they play a 3-5-2, 5-3-2 in defense. That's typical. But what happens is something that we don't generally see. The fullbacks tuck in, and the center backs, the right and the left center back, usually overlaps and causes an overload. And the center back that remains acts as a sweeper. And it's a system that's very fluid. He's done so well with the players he has. We would look at many of Sheffield's players and we would not bat an eye at them. Dean Henderson has been performing exceptionally well. Shevin mentioned De Gea. I do not think De Gea should be there personally as a United fan. I think he's the best in the world. I don't think he's performed like the best in the world recently.
It's personally a little bit past my bedtime, so my mind's not working. So forgive me for including De Gea in there.
It's fine. But I think Schmeichel, Alisson, and Henderson have been exceptional this season. Fleck has also been really good in that Sheffield United system, controlling the play. They've done really, really, really well, and I'd like to see where they go from now on, because we know teams sometimes they show up and then the next season they just disappear. But I would like to see how this system works, if teams figure them out, and where they go from there, or how long they can hold on to this sort of momentum.
For sure. All right, thank you guys. So let's move on to a quick fire round of looking at I guess a nomination section. So let's talk a little bit about player of the season, surprise package of the season, best U21 player, surprise underperformer, and top manager of the season. If you guys could just quickly get through some names, that'd be great. Mike, let's start with you.
So my player of the season would definitely be Kevin De Bruyne. I know that there's a lot of hype around Jordan Henderson to play the season, but I personally don't really see it. I think it's more English type of hype that is actually happening. But Kevin De Bruyne has been amazing this season, leading in assists for the Premier League, which is what Kevin De Bruyne does, and it really speaks a lot of what Shevin said last week about Lewandowski. These players perform at this level, and people almost forget how hard it is to actually be at that level, and they take a lot of things for granted. Surprise of the season would definitely be Rashford before he got injured. Like I was not predicting Rashford would have done so well, playing for United and being given the responsibility. I must say that he's done an amazing job, and he proved me wrong because I was totally against them selling Lukaku and so on. But he's done a very good job. Our next major surprise, and this was actually after Carlo Ancelotti came into Everton, was Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and he's been amazing. And he really filled that void that Everton had with the striker. And
Calvert-Lewin's a good shout.
yeah. So on second for the best on the 19 player, on the 21 player, sorry, would definitely go to uh Max Aarons. Shevin had mentioned him before, but Max Aarons has been doing an amazing job, and it's very underrated because he's probably one of the worst defense he's actually playing in. So you don't really get to see his shine that much, but he's been amazing, and I believe that a Premier League team, probably Tottenham, might go and pick him up. And additionally, for the surprise underperformer, definitely Nicolas Pepe. I expected a lot more from Pepe, but he didn't really produce, which and I'm kind of happy about that. Yeah, feels very good when Arsenal declines. Yeah, so and for the top manager of the season, definitely Jurgen Klopp, doing an amazing job with Liverpool.
Thank you, Mike. Chev?
Just gonna go through it super quickly. Player of the season, Kevin De Bruyne. So I think is a pretty obvious choice. And I swear to God, if anybody says Jordan Henderson, I'm gonna disconnect my mic and just go to bed. Surprise package of the season is Sheffield United for sure. Um, I'll skip best under 21. Actually, best under 21 player I think is pretty easy. The answer is Trent Alexander-Arnold, but I think that's a very simple answer. So let me come back to that one. I can give you like a different answer. Surprise underperformer for me is Harry Maguire. I think he's been good in the last few months of the season that we actually got to see. Um, it's just a matter of he wasn't very consistent to begin with, and he wasn't putting in quality performances week in, week out. And I think for the price tag that, obviously he doesn't control this, but he does control how he plays. I think he hasn't justified it properly yet. To be in the same bracket as Virgil van Dijk, he hasn't been as transformative to Manchester United as Van Dijk was to Liverpool. And the top manager this season is Jurgen Klopp for just playing at 100 miles an hour every single day, never giving up, and he's made every single result count for him.
Heavy metal football.
That's him.
I miss him. Zawadi, you want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, player of the season for me is definitely Kevin De Bruyne. As a United fan, it sort of pains me to say that, but you just cannot deny this guy's quality. I think if the season does restart, if there hasn't been a fall in form because of the absence due to coronavirus, I think he will break the record. In terms of the surprise package of the season, I have to agree with Shevin in terms of it being Sheffield United. Wilder's done an immense job. Best under one player. This is quite difficult for me because I don't think Trent has been, though he has been great going forward, there are things about Trent that I've usually had problems with. I think he's a spammer of the ball. Most of the play goes through him. He's not that solid defensively. So I would have to give it to Wan-Bissaka in terms of the surprise underperformer of the season, Harry Maguire, and Pepe. I can't separate the two because Harry Maguire, for the amount of money that was spent on him, I think more was expected of him. And I've seen him at his best in a United shirt. I've seen him at his worst. And for a player that costs that much, I don't think his performances should be fluctuating like that. And top manager of the season, I definitely give that to Jurgen Klopp. So, yeah.
Yeah, but just quickly, as it relates to Nicolas Pepe and Harry Maguire, you guys forgetting that Nicolas Pepe was paid $71 million to just score 3 goals for the Premier League season. That's ludicrous. Midfielders are scoring more than him.
No, I mean that's a valid point as well. I mean, if we're going into that right away, I guess I'll go through mine real quick. I did also have Nicolas Pepe as my underperformer. I do feel that we do have to remember though that Arsenal season has been pretty tumultuous. So I think that definitely had a role to play with that. But I did agree with most of what you guys said. I'm actually really happy everyone mentioned KDB for player of the season because he was my choice as well. But considering, my knowledge is limited, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm making the right choice here. But I think it was a safe choice. 8 goals, 16 assists, 3.7 key passes per game. The guy's basically magic on the field. Despite City's struggles, he's continued to provide good consistency since joining. And even though they're not doing that well this season, my surprise package was a little bit different from you guys. Danny Ings, I thought was having a fantastic season. The man has had so many injury struggles that hampered him, and stopped him from making the cut at Liverpool. And to see him score 15 goals this season so far is actually quite surprising. It would seem that Hudson Odoi has really gotten the best out of him so far, and it'll be interesting to see if he can replicate that next year too. Best under 21s. I didn't really want to look at Trent because I believe he actually turned, or how old is Trent? I'm pretty sure he turned 21 already this season, actually. So I didn't really want to look at him. My 2 choices were Mason Greenwood and Bukayo Saka. Greenwood has 14 goals across all competitions, proving that he has what it takes to eventually excel at United. And Saka has 4 goals, 8 assists, and he's playing a more defensive role for Arsenal. That definitely is something you guys are everyone kind of has to take in mind as well. It takes composure and maturity to play so well in defense if your primary role is more of an attacking thing, and he's 18, so it shows that he has the potential to make it big.
Yeah, the reason I didn't highlight him from our under 21 player is he was thrust into that position because of necessity, not because he was a good like he's been great in that position. But I think if the left back situation wasn't what it was, then he wouldn't have had played that many minutes. I think a better Arsenal youngster to focus on would have been Gabriel Martinelli, who has been great for the flashes that we've seen him in. His problem is he just doesn't get enough game time, so I can understand why he's not a credible pick.
How old is he, Shevin?
We got Martinelli?
Yeah.
I believe he's 19. I can look it up right now.
19.
He's going to be 19 in June.
And he's a big talent, so he's definitely a player to look at, come the following seasons.
And to just add quickly, I believe that if Arsenal does lose Aubameyang, they should really push him. He's proven himself very worthy.
Yeah, he's really talented. I guess the thing on their mind is that he is so young. He's eventually going to hit a wall, like you mentioned very early on in this podcast. And a club that's struggling for instant gratification and instant results might not have enough time for a player to hit the wall. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just my view of it.
Yeah, for sure. And just to round it off real quick, manager of the season. I mean, the obvious answer would be Klopp. I tried to be a little bit less obvious with my answers. Brendan Rodgers was one of them for me because Leicester is continuing to punch above their own weight. It's nice to see them challenging for a higher position in the table once again. And their team is pretty well stacked with serious talent. Him and Chris Wilder, as you guys have mentioned, because no one expected Sheffield United to be as high as they are. And if he could get them into Europe, he definitely deserves a shot alongside Rodgers and Klopp. But that's all the time we have for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this podcast. If you guys want to plug your socials or anywhere and where you can be found, that'd be great.
So Philander 003, you can catch me on Twitter.
You can look for me on Twitter too. It's my first name Shevin _141 at Twitter. You could also find me on Warzone. Let me see your win records compared to mine. That's all I'll say.
It's actually interesting that you decided to provide your Twitter, Chev. You think people are ready for your hot takes?
I hope so, because you need to log on to Twitter one day and realize that Nelson Semedo might be the most underrated player to not win a Ballon d'Or before, or something like that. I'm pretty sure I'll tweet that at like 2 p.m. on an afternoon or something.
It's something to look out for. And you can find me at Brian E Media 1, and I contribute for both Playing for 90 and BVB Buzz, along with GGFN. So I've been your host, Brian. Thank you guys so much for listening, and take care, everyone. I'll see you guys next week.
See ya.